Oh, and it is by far the biggest story in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers wanting out of Green Bay. So yesterday, one of his former Packer teammates, John Kuhn, offered this insight into the situation in Green Bay to the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Take a listen to this.
If I use my business, the football business acumen, and see the tough spot that the Packers are in right now with that first-round pick that they used last year on Jordan Love, that's what makes me pull back a little bit. I still think it's somewhere around 70-75% that Aaron Rodgers is the starting quarterback for the Packers this year.
Okay, interesting comments. Let's bring in Dan Graziano, Bart Scott, and Jeff Saturday. Dan, I saw your face right there. What's the latest in the situation with Green Bay?
Well, they're still in Green Bay. They're still working toward ideally a possible solution that does bring him back. How realistic that is, I mean, John Kuhn wants to put that at 70-75%. That's higher than most people that you talk to right now would put it. But Green Bay still thinks the fences can be mended. The question, of course, is how. So far, contractual remedies have not worked. At this point, the Packers also have to figure out what to do at quarterback if Aaron Rodgers is going to stay away. They haven't had any trade talks. They're telling teams that they're not interested in trading him. Jordan Love's the only quarterback on the roster. They're kind of exploring the veteran quarterback market, whether they sign someone, whether you make a small deal for someone like a Gardner Minshew. You know, those things are all possible for the Packers as they continue to try and work this out.
You have to figure they got to go into training camp with at least more than one quarterback. So, Jeff, you ended your career in Green Bay. How do you see all of this playing out?
The Packers eating crow and getting this contract done. That's how I see this thing happening. Listen, football is a relationship business. I don't care what anybody else gets up here and says. It's about relationship. And the quarterback and the front office of your organization have to be in sync. And what the Packers did to Aaron a couple years ago, it was just disrespectful. I don't care what anybody says. It's hurt feelings. And so what do hurt feelings do? They continue to grow and manifest in this kind of attitude. You could think Aaron's whining. You could think, hey, he should do this, he should do that. But at the end of the day, he had an MVP season last season, and the relationships have to be fixed. Who's the olive branch have to be reached out? It's got to be the Packers. They have to continue to go back, get this long-term contract signed by, or an extension signed by Aaron, so that everything gets put back in order. They are not going to be the same team with Jordan Love and him sitting on the bench, and the distractions this will continue to cause in their locker room will be brutal if this thing continues to play out.
See, Jeff, I think it's a really good point. And Bart, I want to ask you about this. Jeff just mentioned this is a relationship business. So let's say the Packers does offer him a huge extension, making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, all that good stuff. Do you think the relationship is in a good enough place, even with that, for Aaron Rodgers to want to come back?
Not at all. Listen, it's a thin line between love and hate. And when somebody's heart's broken, you can't fix that with money. Aaron Rodgers has money. You can't offer him. You can't buy his love. What happens is when you feel disrespected, I think he waited for an entire year to show the league that he was still able to play at a high level and arguably the best football that he's played his entire career. He's done more with less. This team has not appreciated Aaron Rodgers and has not surrounded him with the weapons that he's needed to be great. Now, listen, they don't have an obligation to tell Aaron Rodgers, hey, we're going to select your replacement, but they have to be transparent. It's about communication. It's crazy how Jimmy G, the two-time Super Bowl champ that has as much to do with the championships as U of I on this telecast, got the respect from the San Francisco 49ers to let them know what they were doing going forward at the quarterback position. Aaron Rodgers says, listen, I'm done. And you can't mend that with money. It's funny how we're finding all his teammates, Brett Favre's in a tree stand somewhere. We got Jeff here today. Coons on air. Listen, Aaron has to understand that he's going to have to get his hands a little dirty to be able to get his wishes and get out, because they can't lose Aaron Rodgers without getting proper compensation.
Okay. Aaron's got to get his hands dirty. Now, we were talking about compensation, and Dan, you brought something up in the meeting that I just really had to get to. You have this interesting idea that the Packers may have an interest in Rodgers sitting out, and there's a consideration here of possibly retiring. Tell me about your financial concern you have there and just a question you have about that.
Well, the dead money hit if they traded him right now would be up around $38 million. Even if they trade him after June 1st, they'd be able to split that up over this year and next year. If they did nothing, right, and he just didn't show up, they wouldn't have to pay his salary. They could get his roster bonus back. They would actually save more in terms of cap relief and cash if he doesn't show up and if they don't trade him. So that's got to be a factor in their decision-making as well. They did draft Jordan Love in the first round last year, so theoretically he's a guy that they believe in for the long term, and possibly they could get him ready. But it's worth watching, see how hard they dig their heels in, especially if his stay is dug in as they seem to be.
Okay, so in that mindset, it would seem like it would make more sense for him to retire from a financial perspective than for them to trade him. Could you imagine that? Well, we'll keep talking about Aaron Rodgers here. We got a lot more. What you got there, Bart?
2 words, James Harden. Come in out of shape and not ready to play. Don't pay attention to the playbook, and they have to pay you anyway. We watch James Harden pull the same stuff, man. I'll show up, pay me my money. I ain't doing nothing.
Hey, listen. We will see how this goes. Go ahead.
Hey, there's a saying in football, you've retired without telling them you've retired, right? I think Jerry Jones made it famous. Hey, the Packers don't want Aaron, to Bart's point, to be retired without telling everybody, man. Like, don't give him the hammy, the calf, whatever soft tissue injury you have. You got to be legit when it comes to that. So what Bart's saying.
So guys are still great with their minds and their spirit about, the rest of the season and obviously we're fighting for a playoff spot, and tomorrow's probably the biggest game, that's the easiest game. So, guys are still optimistic, and we're still fighting, and guys' spirits are still high.
Okay, so the spirits are high, but are this team's playoff hopes? Starting tonight on ESPN against Portland, the Lakers have 6 games remaining on their schedule. They're favored in 4 of those 6 contests, but they only have a 56% chance to earn a top 6 spot in order to avoid the play-in tournament. Jay Will's with us now to talk about Laker troubles. Okay, so Jay Will, LeBron is banged up. Now Anthony Davis is banged up. On a scale of 1 to 10, in terms of really contending to win the championship, are you worried about the Lakers?
10.
Whew.
It's 10. And that's the reality of where we are. Truncated season. People thought LeBron James was going to load manage. Hasn't load managed. Now dealing with a high ankle sprain. That doesn't go away, man. You deal with that for the rest of the season. That only heals in the offseason after having multiple months to go to therapy for that. AD banged up. How is he going to handle? By the way, he still had that Achilles injury he came back with. Dennis Schroeder out for 10 to 14 days. 10 to 14 days for a guy that is probably your 3rd leading scorer on this team. So, yes, you're worried about them. A big-time game tonight against the Portland Trailblazers. They could be in that play-in scenario. They will be in that play-in scenario. And in your first round, you're telling me you have to go against the Utah Jazz or the Phoenix Suns? I know those teams don't want to see the Lakers, but those teams at full health going against the injury-prone Lakers, they're going to smell blood in the water, and they're going to have home court advantage.
Now, if I told you both LeBron and AD would be close to 100%, what would that mean come playoff time? Would they still be your favorite to come out of the West?
Yes. If you're telling me that LeBron is trending at 80% and AD at 90%, they would still be my favorite. Because at the end of the day, LeBron James is the maestro that makes everything happen. He unlocks everybody on this team. We talk about greatness. Last year, he used the hashtag #WashKing to stay motivated. He's been out. Look, he's been out for a month. He needs to be out. He needs to rest. But him coming back on an ankle sprain, high ankle sprain, if he's able to go through the Western Conference and then say he meets the Brooklyn Nets in the World Championship, if he were to go through the Western Conference, then Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, like that catapults him into a different conversation. It does. He would have gone through the Golden State Warriors and the Brooklyn Nets. I don't think any other player in the history of the game have gone through that loaded of teams.
And to win in a situation like that with what you're talking about,
truncated season,
possibly with that ankle sprain lingering into the playoffs, we'll see. Okay, so given LeBron's age, all the wear and tear that he's been through, how worried are you at him getting another crack at the championship?
I'm always worried about LeBron James, but I'm not betting against him. I've said this before. Look, people can say whatever they want to say about me and LeBron James because I've made statements about, back in the day, comparing him a little bit to Scottie Pippen, just mentality-wise, before he became more Michael Jordan, a leader, right? Even if it was like, hey, Michael Jordan would never say things like, I'll never be 100% in my career. That's fine. You can come at me with all that. I'm not betting against this dude. This dude is unique. He is one of one. He is different. If there's anybody that can come back off a high ankle sprain and play through a truncated season and still win a world championship, it is number 23. And that's not MJ, that's LeBron James.
Wow.
He's built for it.
I got to tell you, let's put it in context, by the way. The stakes high for this game against the Blazers. If they lose that game, the world champs would, at this moment, end up in the play-in tournament. Imagine that. Jay Will, thanks so much.
Thanks, Will.
Let's go back over to football and